Good morning,
Hello.
good evening, and everyone. Off to you. Sorry.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Sayantika. We are very happy today to welcome everyone to join us from around the world. It is my pleasure to introduce Sayantika. She's going to be talking to us about the Lego approach to designing a PyData workflow. Without further ado, please take it away.
Lovely. Thanks for the introduction. Today, we will be going a little deep into what design feels and looks like, and why did I choose the Lego approach to explain these concepts. We all love Lego. It gives us an impression that we can build imaginary things, like I can make a whale and it can fly in the sky. It also gives us the feeling that we can stick together a bunch of things and reproduce, adds the element of creativity, and why it's so important today that we think design first. And through the session, we will be going a little deep in design, connecting them with open source, and finally, what are the takeaways that we see at the end of the session. I'm Sayantika. I'm an independent data consultant and an advisor. I work with small and medium sized enterprises to discover their bottlenecks and help craft solutions which are data driven, which are open source at its core. More about me you can find on website and also on my GitHub. Agenda today. Today we will first deep dive into what is a design thinking look like, what is design first approach, shaping a mental model. When we talk about mental model, it is also adding to a framework, to a lot of different concepts out there, and we will be crafting it in terms of how it gels with the Lego system. We will also learning about what is left shift and an interesting incremental left shift design concept. What does a good design feel like when we interact with it? What are the abstraction layers in them, and how interactivity plays an important role in design thinking? Open source as the glue, and we all might have seen this amazing. I always remember this Shark Tank presentation when amazing entrepreneur came with like the glue of which connects the Legos together. And this is how I feel open source. It's that invisible glue that connects all these pieces together and gives us a strong environment and ecosystem to thrive in. Data journey, I call it DJ, which is an amalgam of all the concepts that we will be discussing today. And it's something that I came up with it's about 2 years I've been working on it. And finally I'm able to showcase to the world outside. And the final would be our takeaways from this session today. Sweet. Lego, the mental model. So these are our tiny or big Legos. Each of these make together a certain model. So first we will going deep inside. For any data system to function, to work, we need a static goal. A goal is malleable, but it doesn't change a lot. So we'll be touching upon how to bring out a goal which makes difference, which makes a lot of sense. Then we will connecting that to design. We'll be looking into how we can do design a toolkit using these two concepts. Finally, revision and feedback are the final blocks, and they come as a derivative of a good design. The slide is one of the crux which I came up after interacting with a lot of medium and small size enterprises and also organizations, where there is always a back and forth about what is our need, how do we derive a goal, and how do we connect to the entire business value. And this transition makes a good goal system which is strong, which has the vision of the entire organization, crafts interesting designs, and gives us more of a steady base to work on, like a good base to craft interesting creative ideas on top. So we first start with a need, and we can define it. A need is something which is not static. It is something that we want as an imaginary. No, don't allow right now. Okay. A need, a need is a combination. Like I want a system which is like which is fast, which is speedy, and my goal is that downtime of that system should not be above an hour. Finally, we understand what are the gaps in order to achieve that goal that we have in our mind. uh, Gaps are essentially the bottlenecks. Most of the time, when we work with systems or architecture, the gaps are discovered at the end, just because it's they are the hard questions to ask, and we don't know when what are the gaps initially we found. So, right when we discover our goals, we have to also take into account what are the bottlenecks in our systems. These bottlenecks could be just resource crunches. We just have these amount of resources, or these could be like we have only this duration of time to build something of this sort, and we go back and forth until we either the goals align with the gaps that we tone down the goals, or we work on the gaps and make sure that they are not a barrier to our goals. After a continuous walk through of these two, we finally go and select our resource pool or the tools or the technology. They come in a between apps in the between layer after we have a goal which is well defined. We do the documentation and implementation together, and also feed it to the test and learning model. These test and learn again feeds back to the gaps or the bottlenecks. Why exactly we are doing this at the order that we have been seeing here? This ensures that your system is functioning and also reciprocating to the feedback and revision block of the Lego which we saw. If that feedback is not incremental across while building, at the end it could be a massive chunk of feedback which doesn't exactly align with the different modules that you have already built. And then you might have to rethink about your goals, might have to rethink about the entire design that was built in the first place. So it's very important that we think it as an incremental format and not as a cumulative chunk at the end. Finally, business values. I always say that the business values are derivatives of the goal, which tend to change. If we don't have a static goal, but we are very hell bent on what our business value should look like, they could be KPIs, they could be any other value system that we have built in the organization. It suffers a lot due to like constant movement, constant changes, and then the revenue and the margins are also suffer if there is a built-in concept along with that. So we have to think from need to goals to finding those bottlenecks and finally deriving the business value out of that. This is something which I've been thinking a lot and I wanted to bring in to today's session. AI AI has been shaping our day-to-day activities, how we develop, how we think. And while the implementation barriers are reducing as we speak, like OpenAI introduced like 12 days of interesting showcases. We don't know what's coming next, but we know that the implementation barriers are reducing. But in that scenario, we should be very much at most important given to the architecture, how we want an architecture that survives when all this dust settles down, all the interest, all the hype, all the talks and shiny objects around there, but something that stays after like maybe 15 years or 20 years. If we think in that the big picture, we should also start thinking more in terms of design first approach rather than tool or technology first approach. Again, a bit more on, we have talked about what is a mental model, but how a mental model comes into picture. First, we have to ask those hard questions. Hard questions are essentially the ones which cause a lot of friction. They are not exactly the good ones that give you the credibility or are nice ones to kind of ask. They are the hard questions which maybe questions the entire concept and the value, and then These questions kind of define the base of your need and the gap pipeline. And finally, we think in terms of the left shift thinking. We'll talk more about it. And finally, the end goal is to go from goals to technology, not vice versa. Left shift thinking. This is one, it's not a concept that is new. It's been there for a long, long time, but it's again resurfacing a lot. What is a left shift thinking? Left shift thinking means we spend our utmost time in defining what the design and plan looks like and feels like. More attention to the quality at very initial stages. So we allocate our resource pool maximum to the design, and then slowly, when we feel the design has taken a good amount of shape and is good and ready based on the goals we define, we go and start doing the development process. The test, deploy, and monitor and analyze are the again the substitutes which, if we do the design part well, they have to follow. It's like a domino effect. Do the first bits very well, and then the rest just falls into its right places. And hence, utmost importance to giving to the design thinking and building helps us to make spaces in our architecture. I see an architecture or a design as a instrumental piece where we are building and also giving enough space so that things could move, things could scale, and it's easy to maintain, like similar to a railway track example, where we see there are spaces given when the railway tracks are built, because when the summer season comes in and the tracks expand, they don't break. And hence, it's a good way of thinking and designing. If the space is not taken into factor, the cracks will appear on the tracks, and that's a tragedy, and accidents happen in those scenarios. So that's an interesting example to think about how we can build those spaces and the additive and subtractive nature of building pipelines. While the left shift design thinking is there for a long, long time, this is a new interesting concept where it talks about incremental left shift. And this is very important in the term of the AI gen where we are standing now. What exactly it is. So instead of going 100% on the design in the first go itself, we may take like 50. We are talking about ratios here, so we take 50, and then we do that 50 well of the entire design, and the rest of the 50 of that ratio we just carry on the blocks and we put it out there. The design, the implementation blocks are there. Now this 50 of the design, we again work in the next iteration, we work through it again, put the blocks of implementation, testing, and other pieces all together. Once we combine all these together, then we have 50 of first iteration design, 50 from the second iteration design, and now we have the cumulative whole ratio of the entire design print, and the implementation is still to be done. We take those blocks and then put it in terms of where it fits best, do the iteration one more time so that we have the entire system working in synchronously and harmony, and it's like a well-oiled machine. So instead of doing entire design in one go, we take a percentage into it first and see the feedback out of it and do the next iteration again. But this also making sure that we do the design first. It doesn't mean that the implementation comes first. Still, it's design first, and it gives you a room to like incorporate those uh, chunks which may not be visible at the same front. Like you might not have all the puzzle pieces right in front of you to craft the test design. In those scenarios, it is very useful. This concept comes very useful. Again, what is a good design feels like? We talk about how to go from needs to goals to business value, how we can define a good mental model to make a good design, and then what left shift design acts in those how it is helpful, how it gives us room, how it gives us the additive and subtractive nature to incorporate Lego blocks in between. But now we are going to talk a little bit more about what a good design feels like. And this is something which I have been inherently practicing, and kind of it also comes from like our visual, our tangible, how we interact and how we interact those with those workflows. All these concepts together bring a nice performance, a nice holistic approach, how a design should look and feel like. And these are two of the most important ways of thinking about it: long term relationships, but not creating emotional dependency out of a good design. How we can think about it: imagine that I'm in a platform and I loved a certain, like a favorite section on top of that platform because I used to visit those links quite often. And having those up handy made a lot of sense. Like, I don't have to navigate to the complex workflow. Rather, I just click on the favorites and I know my favorite workflows right up there. But one single day, that kind of vanished with the new update of that entire web page, and I was kind of lost because I had kind of created an emotional dependency for myself on that particular blog, without which I can't function on a daily basis. And emotional dependencies are created only when you interact with the workflows quite often, quite frequently, and has a value, and you see there is a value driven out of it. In order to reduce those emotional dependency and have the long term relationship built, we have to also take into account and craft, if those decisions are made to add or increment or remove certain features, we have to prepare our user. We have to prepare what how it impacts our user, and also prepare them that this impact is going to come. This is how we are designing it, and hence we these are the steps that you can follow in order to like get comfortable with the new design. Once, if the emotional dependency is already established, if it's not, it's a good way of thinking that now we are in the position of making changes, increments in a rapid pace, so that our users are not impacted. So we have to think from an empath shoes, where we think people first. And as you can see, I'm like, people are always above process. All the tools, all we are thinking about the data paradigm with AI coming into picture, we have to think people first, because at the end of the day, we are building for the community, for the people, for our users. The next is good design accelerates new ideas. An incremental way of thinking about, it's about the Legos. A good design, if we have a good base, it we can build a lot on top of it. But if the base is shaken and it doesn't have all the right nurturing and ingredients, we cannot accelerate. We cannot put a lot of force on it to go on a rapid rate. It's gonna break. So if there's a good design, we can think in terms of like, it's gonna bring a lot of interesting ideas and will help us to accelerate that. It is discrete. So abstraction is one concept which has been talked about a lot. And a good design is discrete. There are different levels of abstraction that could be built, also depending on your users, how they interact. And a good design platform grows with the needs and opportunities. It's not static. It doesn't mean having a design limits you from adding interesting bits and pieces. It scales on its own. It has it depending on how the interaction and flows looks like, we can increment it, we can modify it. And it also very much aligns with the idea of that good design removes a lot of complexities. It is simple. It's just having that simple meal which gives you joy. And it is easy to use, it is not complicated, yet solves a value and need. In all these, where does open source come into picture? We talked about a lot about design, the goals, what a good design feels like. Now we have now where the role of open source comes in combining all this, gelling all these concepts together. Open source, by its nature and default, it's empowering. It is transparent. Like all of us in this session can pick an open source tool, can see how it works. We know in and out, like what are the bottlenecks that it might have, what are the limitations, and that is empowering. Once we have all these ideas right in front of us, we don't have to kind of think about where these resource or tools are gonna be a bottleneck to us. It's scalable. By nature, it's scalable. Each of the tools come with diverse minds working on it. Every tool, we have different contributors across the globe who are designing and building this. It drives interoperability and breaks these silos. Silos are one of the most dangerous ways of thinking in the design world, where we just think in our own mind. While open source breaks that, it's decentralized by its nature, and hence we can say that it takes into account the various principles, the various ideas from all across, uh, from different communities and also different technologies. And it's like it has been evolving from ages, so it also has this heuristics built inside it that helps us bring in better tools, better modules, and better workflows. Accessible. I have not personally come across many such ways where I can tell, like, better that open source, it's being accessible. Accessibility is one of the key concepts which a good design and a good uh, workflow should look and feel like. It's creative, and practically it's invisible. We use open source not just in tools and technologies. We interact it in our day-to-day lives. We don't even understand, or like it doesn't even give us the impression that we are using it. So it's that invisible thread, the invisible glue that stitches everything, brings us an ecosystem that is worth thriving in. Finally, all these ideas, from thinking about design, taking into account the Lego approach, building a system out of it. Data Journey was born as just a thought process back in 2022. And I was just thinking of all these concepts and say, like, where does all these fit together, and how can I nurture them into maybe a toolkit or a framework. So open source came together with design, and Data Journey was born. What is Data Journey's vision? This is my handcrafted design about Data Journey. She just did it on my pencil and on my iPad. So I'm gonna go through bit by bit what is it about. The first base is like the static resource. The static resources for me in here is GitHub as a platform. So all the tools and technologies are connected to GitHub. The next, the P1 are the tools which are open source. So we will be seeing different tools that are kind of movable on its own, and it moves around and it interacts with other tools. P3 is the okay, we go P3 and then we come to P2. There's a reason behind it. P3 is the set of abstraction that you can build on top. It could be simply a CLI, where the user doesn't have to go through typing those commands or changing the directory or putting those tokens or any of those layers of authentication. P3 helps us to derive that abstraction where the users can finally interact with the platform. And P2 is about the maintenance and monitoring layers that are built. It could, in this case, in DataJourney, it's all the GitHub Actions that are coming together, the pre-commit hooks that are working in the background, the Pixie environment, which grows and shrinks time to time, and it's all cached in the system, which there is also a pipeline that runs in the background to check if the cache is not stale, it's updated, things like that. So a good system looks and feels something that could be scaled. P1 is completely movable and could be replaced by other tools and technologies. So those are the tiny blocks of Legos in that. And then the abstraction that is built and the P2 that is built on top gives you a check and medium, that check and balances to feel that if it's all working in order. This is DataJourney. With the time constraint, I don't think I can put up a demo right there, but take a look. I have also added the links on the section here, which takes you to the GitHub repository. The README design is, I'm going to try and see if I can quickly go and to the repository. Sweet. I hope the screen is visible. I'm going to do a little zoom in there. So each of the concept that we talked about, the design philosophy of DJ has been present here. What are the tools and technology that DJ incorporates? Everything right from ingesting the data set to interacting with them and finally crafting visualizations out of it are present in the in one single ecosystem, all derived by open source. Finally, we talk about the different tasks. So in order to interact with DJ, it's pretty simple. We can interact with each of the component like just having at like a one single command. And Pixie, it's also similar to like do it in some sense, but implementation of Pixie is much easier. And we can every analysis. There are also AI scripts in Bill, which does some kind of analysis on the existing data sets and so forth. I'm very curious, like if any of you would like to like interact with it and see, give suggestions, feel free to open an issue, and we can take a and I can take a deeper look based on your suggestions, or you want to open a conversation about how it looks and feel like. Okay, now we are going to go full screen. So takeaways: thinking goal to technology and not vice versa. Throughout the presentation, we talked a lot about design. We talked a lot about what goals should feel like. And finally, we have to think like from goals to technology, because goals are like those containers and where we fit the technology. While technologies are always vast, it's a vast ocean, and we cannot pinpoint those technologies just like throwing goals at them. It's a very challenging way. Um, Popularity, it's not always a good metric to pick your tools and technologies. Think what is the requirement, what are the bottlenecks, what are the resources, and go design first. Think open source as a medium, which just not have the tools, but also the ecosystem, the community build, and it all comes together. Finally, people greater than process should be at the crux of what we build. That's a wrap. Feel free to drop an email and connect. I'm very happy that all of you could join the session. Looking forward to your feedbacks. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Sayantika. There is a quick question that perhaps you could help answer.
Yes, initially it's always a very painful process to enable a left shift design, because implementation is tangible, while design is not. So where I start with is giving a lot of pre-work to and examples that what has been done in the past and how slowly it acts as the base to like crafting good solutions. It's not being a very easy peasy route to go, but having like all these examples from my past experience and throwing them out, giving them an overview helps to craft to tone down the impatient nature to working in the client ecosystem. Oh, are they getting impatient over the time, or quite opposite, seeing more and more benefits in this? Yes, there are the benefits come in the later part, so having to deal with the impatience first, and then slowly, there's happy faces comes at the end, which I enjoy and kind of thrive on now.
Brilliant. Thank you again, Sayantika. Just a bit of housekeeping for anybody who is interested to continue the discussion. We do have a PyData global Discord, and also the recordings for this will be available shortly on AirMeet. And also the presentation is available as a resource in the resources tab on the right. Thank you, everyone, and see you at the next session.
Thank you.